Good evening, and welcome to the November meeting of the MCCSC Board of School Trustees. We ask that you please come to order. Tonight, we honor the excellence of MCCSC's dedicated employees, students, and volunteers who make a difference in our school community. Mrs. Harmon.
Thank you, President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, the Board of School Trustees, and community members. It's my pleasure to share this month's Excellence Spotlight, and this month we have two awardees, a student and staff, so that's thrilling. I'm going to start off with our Student Excellence Spotlight for November. We are proud to recognize Rex Spear as one of our November Excellence Spotlights. Rex is a student at Bloomington High School North and is an outstanding student whose involvement and leadership have made a lasting impact on our local community. He actively participates in a wide range of North activities, including serving as a Cougar leader, contributing to the Student Athletic Board, and representing his peers on the Superintendent's Student Advisory Committee. His positive attitude, strong leadership, and genuine enthusiasm have created a ripple effect throughout the school. His energy is not only uplifting to fellow students, but also contagious to fans at Cougar games, where his spirit helps foster a sense of unity and pride. Rex exemplifies what it means to be a leader, thoughtful, engaged, and committed to make North a better place for everyone. We are grateful for his contributions and proud to celebrate his excellence this month. Congratulations, Rex.
Okay, we'll do them.
At least he came in the right shirt.
Thank you. We are also proud to recognize Ms. Abby Brim, intermediate inclusion teacher at Grandview Elementary, as our other recipient of the Excellence Spotlight for November. Ms. Brim is a valued member of our inclusion team at Grandview. She welcomes all students into the building with their best interest in mind. Ms. Brim works tirelessly to ensure that students with a variety of needs are included in her classroom, and beyond her own classroom, she actively supports her coworkers by helping put effective supports in place so that all students can succeed. Her dedication, compassion, and commitment to inclusion make a profound impact on our school community. Congratulations, Ms. Brim, and thank you for exemplifying excellence every day.
Setup for this. This is something. On behalf of the board, thank you, Ms. Harmon, and congratulations to both of you, Rex Spear and Ms. Brim, tonight. We appreciate all of your efforts in our district, and we're grateful for you being here tonight as well. Dr. Winston, I understand you would like to recognize a couple of teachers with the Superintendent Sustaining Excellence Award. Karen is coming to the rescue.
My apologies. The Indiana Foreign Language Teachers Association. I want to give special recognition to two Bloomington North foreign language teachers for their honors at the Indiana Foreign Language Teachers Association Conference. Hungzi Wang, a world language teacher specifically teaching Chinese at Jackson Creek Middle School and Bloomington High School North, was recently honored with the Tom Alsop Distinguished World Language Publication Award. This award is intended to recognize an article in a journal, dissertation, book, or research work related to the world language discipline. Can we give Ms. Wang a round of applause? In addition, Japanese teacher Michiko Owaki won the 2025 Association of Indiana Teachers of Japanese Rising Star Award, and I've been in her classroom too. This award recognizes educators for their contributions to Japanese education in Indiana who have been teaching for 5 years or less. Both of our teachers were honored at the IFT LTA conference a few weeks ago, and tonight we would like to recognize them for this outstanding achievement. Can we give her a round of applause as well? Ms. Owaki, would you like to come forward and say a word?
You can go to that microphone if you'd like to say something.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me here and recognizing my award. I'm really thankful to be able to teach my students every day. I love High School North. I also like High School South as well because my sons go there. But yes, the Mr. Stark, the principal, is always very supportive. And I have been having a really good experience, and then I always like to think about how I can make my class and then language learning fun for my students, and then I'm so glad that my efforts was recognized.
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you so much. We're going to take a picture with the certificate. One moment. Well, it is always a nice way to start the meeting with a bunch of excellence awards and congratulations to all tonight. We will now receive our quarterly update on the activities of the MCCSC Foundation from the Foundation Director, Mrs. Helm.
Good evening, President Hennessy, Superintendent Dr. Winston, and the rest of the board. And hello, I haven't seen you today either, Tom. So, if you don't know, our auction closes in 2 hours. Actually, 1 hour and 51 minutes. So I will be scooting after my report because I have to get home and make sure I'm set up in order to close that correctly. I just really want to say a huge thank you. We have over 200 items on it. We have over 125 donors this year. Community supporters, individuals who do things, crafts, and different things. So we're very, very appreciative of everyone who has donated an item to it. We have some sponsors this year, and we also have a huge bidding committee this year, our bidding community this year. So probably the largest bidding community that we have had since we started the auction many years ago. I'm not going to say because I think it's 12, but I could be wrong. Our goal is 25,000. When I left my computer, it was at 24,642. I know we're a little higher than that because I just got pinged that I've been outbid on a couple of items. So I know it's a little higher than that. So I feel really confident that we're going to hit the 25,000 goal. But we need everybody bidding all the way up until 8 p.m. And you know what? I love to blow goals. So take me over, people. That's what I would love to see. And hopefully people here have your max bid set so that your system is doing it for you and you don't have to be there. So again, thank everybody. And I will put in a plug. If you get outbid tonight, you can always make a donation. Donations of cash, checks, stock, whatever. I take it all. We take it all. So pickup will begin tomorrow at noon. If you win, you will get a text and some emails following with those particular pickup times. But we'll start tomorrow from noon to 4, and then Thursday and Friday will go from 9 to 4. So just start working on that, and we're going to get it all laid out early in the morning. Since I met with you guys last, the foundation has received several grants that we have written to community organizations. So I want to highlight who those grants are that have come in over the fall and give you a little bit of a background on what they're going to do. Smithfield Charitable received a grant. We received a grant through them. And what that is doing is it is expanding the number of seats of, I never say if it's Dibbles or Dibbles. Dibbles? Dibbles. Okay. So we're expanding the number of seats in Dibbles, which I've been told is a very needed thing for the corporation. So we're happy that we're going to be doing that. We also received a grant from Health by Design. What that is safe routes to school. So it's in that space. It is purchasing additional bike racks for, I believe, 8 schools. It is paying for a pedestrian gate that was much needed at Rogers Benford. It is supporting the bike rodeo program, and it is also allowing Lisa Greathouse, who is our manager of coordinated school and health, to add some additional bike programming in some of our title schools for 913 sports. So if you don't know what 913 sports does, Google it and look it up. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool programming. They're based out of Indianapolis. So we're really excited to be able to have them and add that programming in for our students in helping them understand bike safety, how bikes can actually be a transportation vehicle. You don't have to drive a car, you can go on a bike. So it's that type of thing, encouraging safe routes to school and getting kids to take advantage of those opportunities rather than just necessarily getting on a school bus. Bloomington Urban Enterprise, we received the Emerging Workforce Grants, and this is for schools that serve a high percentage of students who live in the urban enterprise zone. And then finally, I would like to give a little accolades to the IU Credit Union. If you're not aware, we've been doing a Spirit debit card program with them for about the past 4 years, where it allows you to logo your debit card with one of MCCSC's high schools. So all 4 high schools are available that you can get a Spirit card that carries that logoing on it. And every time they swipe those transactions, the credit union gives back. So we tapped out last year with the maximum amount that we could receive from them, which is $15,000. And where my board has voted to put that is the past 3 or 4 years that we've been doing this with the credit union, it's going straight into the foundation's unrestricted endowment. So the goal is to do an endowment build or to help us get that endowment up so that sustainability of the foundation holds longevity beyond me. And anybody else. So if you're into that endowment space, you understand what we're talking about. Just to give you a feel for it, we have 1,800 active cards. So that's quite a few alumni, and I've been told by the credit union it's not just alumni. Sometimes it's the kids themselves. If their parents allow them to carry a debit card, sometimes the kids are carrying them themselves. So it's a great program. If you're a member of the credit union, go get one. Year-end giving is coming up. We are approaching the end of 25, so it is time where people will start thinking about their year-end giving and tax deductions. So if you are in that space, I hope that you will consider making a philanthropic charitable gift to the foundation. I also want to let you know the board, my board today has approved, and we're going to be launching a new giving program. It's going to be called Community Partners in Giving, and the initiative is to offer local businesses and community members an ability to support our mission while they receive more year-round marketing across our fundraisers. Traditionally, what we have done is sponsorships on main events. Sometimes if those sponsorships or those types of events don't resonate with a business, then they may choose to not do it. If you're not a golfer, you're not going to sponsor the golf outing. So, those types of things. So think of it in that space. So this is a way for them to be able to receive different types of recognition through it. A lot of foundations are moving towards this more of a general giving approach as opposed to related to a specific event. We still are offering specific sponsorships. Those are not going away, but it just gives a broader way to engage in philanthropy and make an ongoing impact. So I wanted to let you know. Grant cycles. We closed grant cycle 1, and I want to let you know we awarded 32 grants totaling $44,000. Grant cycle 2 is open. So please let all faculty know we're shooting it out as much as possible. It closes January 31st. So this will be their second opportunity for this year, second and final opportunity. We do 2 grant awards, 2 grant cycles, and we did change up the timing a little bit this year. So if you're looking for a grant, it's open. You can spend a little time over the holidays writing it. So it's there. And happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Helm. We appreciate all the work that the foundation does. And now it's time for public comments, but I do not think we have any public comments, so we will move right along. We will instead consider the consent agenda that includes the following: minutes from the regular board meeting held on October 28th, 2025, the ECA expenditures, the overnight and out-of-state field trips, the financial report from October, the appropriation balance report from October, the register of claims November 11th, the payroll register and payroll claims October, request to declare as surplus and authorize disposal of out-of-date items. Do I have a motion regarding the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second? So it was moved by Ross and seconded by Asia that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Next for our consideration are the donations. We have received over $9,000 of donations. Thank you to all of our donors. Your generosity is, as always, appreciated. Do I have a motion to accept the donations?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Ross and seconded by Ashley that we accept the donations as presented. All those in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Now for our consideration is the second and final reading of the following Policy 5111, eligibility of resident and non-resident students. Is there a motion to adopt Policy 5111 as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ashley and seconded by Ross that we adopt the Policy 5111, eligibility of resident and non-resident students as presented. Dr. Winston.
Thank you. I recommend that you approve Policy 5111 revisions as presented in your packet.
Any comments from the board? No. Okay. Just a reminder from me before we vote that this was a policy that we were required to pass and not one that the board has sort of written and put on the books, just as a reminder. So all those in favor of the motion to adopt Policy 5111, eligibility of resident and non-resident students as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Now we move on to collective bargaining and the agreement between MCCSC and the Monroe County Education Association. Do I have a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second? It's been moved by Ross and seconded by Asia that we approve the collective bargaining agreement between MCCSC and MCEA as presented. Dr. Winston.
Thank you. I recommend that the Board of School Trustees approve the MCCSC and MCEA bargaining agreement as presented in your packet.
Okay. Any comments from the board? All right. Moving right along. All those in favor of the motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement between MCCSC and MCEA, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Next for our consideration is the personnel report. Do I have a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Heavy lifting on this side of the table. It's been moved by Ross and seconded by Ashley that we approve the personnel report as presented. Dr. Henderson.
President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, and members of the Board of School Trustees, at this time I request that you please approve the recommendations as presented in your board packet in the personnel report.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. Any comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the personnel report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. We now move on to the contracts. Do I have a motion to approve the contracts and the quote as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ross and seconded by Tiana that we approve the contracts and quote as presented. Mr. Irwin.
Yes, all the contracts have been reviewed through our normal processes and are set for your approval, so I recommend the contracts as presented.
Okay. Are there any comments from the board on any of these contracts or the quote? Right. All those in favor of the motion to approve the contracts and quote signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Next is the recommendation to adopt Resolution 2025-25 Tax Anticipation Warrant. Do I have a motion to adopt this anticipation warrant as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second? It's been moved by Ross and seconded by Aaron Wyatt that we adopt the Resolution 2025-25 as presented. Nothing?
I have something for you. Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay, yes.
So I just reminding you that this is the same process that you went through earlier in the year in 2025 program. So this is for the 2026 program. The resolution that you're approving does not commit us to going through with the program, but allows us to go through with it if we need to. So you're approving us the permission to go and do it, but it does not guarantee us to do it. So we'll continue to evaluate that as we work through it. But again, you should be aware because it's familiar for a process that you just did earlier this year.
All right, thank you. That makes sense. Are there any comments from the board on this tax anticipation warrant? All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 2025-25 Tax Anticipation Warrant signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Tonight, we have several updates to be presented. The first is the quarterly 2-year strategy to sustaining excellence and financial transparency update. Dr. Winston.
Thank you, President Hennessy. Exactly 9 months ago, the Board of School Trustees and I announced our 2-year strategy to achieve fiscal balance. Part of that strategy included our public commitment to provide quarterly updates and financial transparency regarding our efforts. The 2 board priorities that have been established for this year include achieving financial balance and to sustain excellence. As a friendly reminder, I'd like to just take a few moments to remind everyone of our journey toward achieving balance. In July of 2024, a mere few months ago, when I was appointed as an interim superintendent, the Board of School Trustees tasked me with taking a comprehensive look at our corporation finances. As a result of that, we contracted with Policy Analytics to ask them to help us take a deep dive in looking at our finances and identifying opportunities for us to streamline operations and identify future fiscal viability opportunities. And during the process of that work, we came forward in February of this year and announced our 2-year strategy. That was in February. And then shortly thereafter, SCA 1 was passed by our state legislature, which was at the end of April. So I think it's important to note the timing of such. Consistent with our promise to the community, however, we have continued to provide quarterly updates on our finances, and we are eager to provide you with this update, this third update, 9 months into our 24-month strategy this evening. So it's my pleasure to be able to turn the microphone over to Mr. Irwin, our Chief Financial Officer, and he will provide our quarterly financial transparency report that details the progress that we've made to date to reduce expenses, to increase our resource optimization, generate new revenue, and ultimately increase our cash reserves. As we shared in February, our first priority is reducing expenses while minimizing direct impacts on classroom instruction. Mr. Irwin?
Thank you, Dr. Winston. Thank you, Board. So again, as Dr. Winston said, this is our third quarterly update, and so I'm happy to share that with the public. So I think it's a couple of themes that I want to continue to do as we go through this process, just as we work through the updates quarter by quarter. The first slide that I'm showing you is the same slide that you've seen many times and that we've shown to the public many times. This is the slide that shows what it is that the school corporation was facing as of December of 2024. And so as I try to orient you to what you're looking at on the slide, is the numbers inside of the bar, inside of the colors, that's the fund balance of the respective fund. The number at the top or the bottom is the cumulative total of those fund balances. So the ones that are at the top that are showing there above the zero, those are places where there was a cumulative total that was a positive fund total. The ones at the bottom shows a negative. And if you follow the trend all the way out to 2028, you see the high-paced decreasing cash balances across the funds, and as it gets all the way out to 2028, as much as over $30 million in deficit. So therein lies, it just kind of shows that quick reference point of what the school corporation was facing, why the two-year strategy was enacted, and then we'll move forward into talking about some of the progress. But I want to continue to level set there and say, what was it that we were facing? Just have that starting point and then talk about moving forward. The next thing that I want to do for you all is I want to continue to talk about what's changed since the last time we talked. This is an ever-evolving picture. And so I've put 7 things on here that reflect some of the big key pieces that I think is important for you to know because the context is important. And so when we look at this, number 1 says the actual revenue and expenses through October 31 of this year. Again, everything leading up through October is actualized. Everything after October is projected. So at the end of every month, we're looking at our projections and saying, how close is that to actual? Does that mean that we need to adjust a projection moving forward because something did or did not happen based on the way that we thought it would? And then we work through that process each and every month. The next big thing on number 2 is the certification of our October student count. Student count, our ADM, is the number 1 funding revenue source for the school corporation. So we certified our October count at 9937, which was lower than our fall count last year. That was expected. We talked about that for a little while now, what the expectation was as our demographics continue to change and shift. What I do want to make note of is that's very close to what it is that we expected it to be. And that's a good thing for us as it's brings some comfort to say, are we in tune with what it is that we are expecting to happen in the future? And not that that is completely inside of our control, but we're continuing to make plans off of the things that we expect to happen and making educated decisions about what that looks like, whether it's from the demographic study or the trends that we see happening here locally. The next piece is that as I've had more and more time being on board here is to continue to take more focused looks at the projections for the remainder of 2025 and all of 2026. As you move through the year, you're a little more certain about what's going to happen there towards the end of the year. So just continuing to review those things and make sure that what it is that we've seen occur, do we expect that to continue, or was that something that was an anomaly that maybe just would have happened during 2025? And so that doesn't affect how it is that we project moving forward. And then are those expenses something or revenue that we expect to continue to happen, much like almost like the budgeting process to a degree? And then what's a reasonable expectation for what those expenses could look like moving forward? Number 4, this is an important piece, is just the expected effects of the decisions regarding staff pay, benefits, and insurance. So with your approval of the MCA contract tonight, that's one of the pieces. We are bargaining with ASME now, and we're working through those plans of what it is that we expect to do across all pay groups. So we're doing the best that we possibly can to make sure that we take care of our staff and the benefits that we provide and insurance increases that continue to happen, and try to limit the impact that it has on our staff while not altering the course of achieving financial balance. So that is something that we're very much making very in tune decisions with, but we are trying to make sure to do the best we possibly can by our employees throughout this process. Number 5 talks about the expected effects of the SEA 1 legislation. I know last month Barry Gardner from Policy Analytics gave a very in-depth review of what the effects were of that legislation on MCCSC. I think he talked a little bit about the broader context as well. But again, I've taken that information, which very much affects our cash projections and our cash flows, and folded that information into our projections and our analysis. The next piece is just to continue to look at the expenses. I think this is an important piece. Is I talked about an in-tune look of 2026, but continuing to say we've layered in some of the things that we know expense-wise are coming at us over the next year, the rest of this year and next year. But then after 2026, the expense projections are flatlined after that. Again, measuring if our expenses continue at this pace based on what we expect to receive in revenue and how we expect our student counts to proceed, where does that leave us? Not just in the next, during this 2-year strategy, but for many years to come, making sure that we're looking forward into the future about what it is that we expect for the school corporation's finances. And then the last one, number 7, talks about just the planned input of the taxable general obligation bond. We talked a lot about one-time funds last time. That is now actualized. We've sold those bonds. We've receipted those bonds in. That allows us to reimburse the operations fund for past capital expenditures. And we'll show that what the planned input of those one-time dollars are to help us as we work to achieve balance. So with that being said, I want to talk about this graph again. I try to continue to set it up similar to what it is that we've been looking at because I think it helps you orient to the slide a little bit faster. But again, talk about some of the key points that I want you to take away as you look at these graphs. Again, the numbers inside of the bar, those are the numbers for the respective funds. And the numbers at the top, I should probably take a drink of water, huh? The numbers at the top represent the cumulative total of those funds over time. We're making progress, right? If you think back to the first slide that you saw and where we are now, we've made significant progress in 9 months. Balance is not achieved. We're not there yet, but we're continuing to work in the right direction. As you looked at the previous slide, we're bringing in and looking at the right information to help us make decisions. The numbers and the totals are a little less than what you saw last month, but again, when I talked to you last month, I talked about how we didn't layer in some of these other things that we knew were going to happen because we were trying to look at, without those things accounted for, where are we? So again, one of the other pieces that's important, and I'm going to kind of talk through some of these pieces as you look at the story that this tells, is our referendum fund. We see a one-time increase because this coming year we know that we're able to levy the full voter-approved rate. But with the effects of SEA 1, it's going to artificially lower that AV and not allow those referendums to produce the same amount of money. So the amount, you see, the trajectory of those fund balances are declining. And once you get past 2028, it doesn't slow down because the AV growth is still getting pulled down. When you think about Barry Gardner's report, he talked about the effects of SEA 1, not just in 26, 27, 28, but also in 29 and 30 and 31. So that is something that we're very much paying attention to. The operations fund and the red right there, that's the one-time funds. The operations fund in yellow is separated out because we want to make sure that people see the use of one-time funds, that yes, they're in the operations fund, but they're providing us that runway to work towards balance so that we're not making some of those big shifts that we don't need to make as these curveballs like SEA 1 come at us. It's providing us that runway to buoy the balances there and continue to work towards balance and make systematic changes to the way that we're doing some of those things, especially in the operations fund. The other thing that's important to know is that the red that's say in 2025, that $5 million we got for the EV bus rebate, that is then layered into the yellow moving forward. So with that being said, without those one-time funds, we're not in a place of balance. We see that the yellow is getting a little bit bigger as we move forward. We're moving in the right direction, again, with expenses layered in through 26 and then flatline. We're making progress, but those one-time funds are very essential to us right now. The last thing that I want to talk about and kind of hit on the point here is cash balances as safety nets. They're less than optimal. There's some context here that I think is important that allows people to maybe connect with the concept. Cash balances allow us, just like in our regular funds within our own bank account, to say that when the next curveball like SEA 1 comes, that's outside of our control, when utility rates go up or that car breakdown happens or whatever it is, we know those things happen in our real life, that we have the funds on hand to help us navigate the challenges that we experience, whether that's in our own personal life or that's us as a school corporation. And so that's important that we continue to put those to an optimal level, because I think what's deceiving is if you look at 2024's numbers, you might say, well, is 2024 what we're trying to get to? And it's not. that's a be able to say what's the context of how does this year 2025 compare to where we were last year. But we're trying to make sure that we have the right amount of expenditures as it relates to the percentage of our spend, to say, do we have the right amount of cash on hand to cover that as it relates to that type of SEA 1 effect or that car breakdown, so to speak. So it's just that making sure that we have the right safety nets in place. And I think the other piece that's important is the in and out of cash flow, right? We always want to make sure we have the right amount of cash in our bank, whether it's us individually or as a school corporation, that we can handle the inflow and outflow of dollars. Got to pay these bills. Our tax levy funds, like the operations fund and the referendum fund, the vast majority of their revenue comes in 2 times a year. So you're going 6 months without revenue into that fund. You've got to be able to sustain that through that period. And so we need to make sure that we continue to keep our cash balances in a place that allows the school corporation to continue up with that ebb and flow of our expenses. And just again, another piece of context, the education fund. Some of the expenses in an individual month could be as high as a little over $9 million in 1 month. So when you look at the numbers right now of the total fund balance at the end of the year being less than that, that provides you a little bit of context about what it is that we're looking at and why we continue to say that that's not sufficient and why we need to continue to move that in a more optimal level. So I think that those are 3 points that I want to continue to show it's progress. We're 9 months in to a 2-year strategy, and this will continue to be an ever-evolving process and good practice moving forward, that we continue to monitor the ebbs and flows of the things that continue to happen in relation to public schools and our funding and our expenditures and all the other things that we're talking about. But in terms of the 2-year strategy, significant progress has been made, but we're not there yet. One more thing that I want to connect to, because I know Dr. Winston mentioned this earlier, and we talked about it last month about SEA 1 in depth, is just to continue to hit home a little bit about what the expected effects are of this legislation on us as a school corporation. And I tried to break it down into a more simplistic view, because the information that Barry gave us last month, it was a lot. There's a lot there. It's very complex. There's a lot of moving parts. So just trying to tie some of this together is the first part at the top is kind of the overarching umbrella, and the pieces underneath it are just some of the tidbits of information that help kind of break that out and maybe help people see what it is that we're trying to navigate and how it's affecting us locally. So the estimated cumulative total over 26 through 31 is over $30 million of less revenue than what we were expecting prior to the legislation. When you look at that in itself, the breakdown of that, just starting next year in 2026, it's a $2 million annual loss to debt service and operations. And as depending as what the legislature does in this short session, like Barry talked about, if they legislate this to where it all goes to operations, it all goes to operations. It's a $2 million loss straight to operations right off the top. The next point is that starting in 2028, we're required to start sharing operations dollars with charter schools. So another hit to the operations fund. You hear us continuing to talk about these pieces. That as that continues to escalate in the way that they phase it in, it's at an additional cost of $1.8 million per year by 2031. And then again, we talked about the referendums. When those voter-approved referendums happened, there was not SEA 1 in mind. And so the voter-approved rate can only produce what the rate says. So if it's 18.5 cents, like referendum 1 is 18.5 cents, if AV continues to go down, that 18.5 cents multiplied by a smaller number is going to keep giving you a smaller outcome. And that's going to continue to happen as they continue to push down AV over the life of this bill. And so it's important to see that, again, at some point, that's $3 to $4 million annually less that those referendums are going to produce. And as we continue to make good on the money that the community has supported us in, we'll continue to use it for the same reasons that we told the community we were going to use it. We'll use it as intended. But that's a challenge that we have to continue to talk about and overcome over time, is how it's affecting the referendums. So I just wanted to kind of break that down a little bit and put it in a more succinct, kind of digestible manner as it relates to the projected effects of SEA 1 on MCCSC directly. A lot of schools are going to be getting out and talking about this, and I think we've been a leader in getting out with our community and saying, here's what we think is going to happen. And more schools are getting out and talking about that. I think Dr. Winston's going to touch on that here in a little bit. But we want to continue to make sure that we're trying to do a good job of, one, being transparent, but telling our story and helping people understand what it is that we're trying to navigate.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin. This is so very important, and we hope that this is helpful for everyone. Our commitment continues to be to make sure that we are as transparent as possible and that we continue to educate and inform ourselves and educate our community as well. In spite of all of the challenges that are ahead of us financially with SEA 1 and the enrollment challenges that schools across the state and throughout the country are experiencing, sustaining excellence is still at the forefront of every decision that we make. And yet, when you look here on this slide, you see just a few highlights of some headlines from across the state that demonstrate that it's not just an MCCSC thing. Several months ago, when we began talking about this, some of the dialogue in our community was, is it just MCCSC? And we said no. You know, I know Mr. Irwin and I have been in a number of CFO and superintendent meetings where we've been engaged in conversations around, have you begun to talk to your community? And some of the responses were, no, not yet. We're still trying to figure it out. And so, yes, we have been ahead of the curve because we really wanted to make sure that we were crystal clear on what the potential impacts are. And now we know what the actual impacts are going to be. But as we look at these headlines, we are seeing and hearing more and more about the numerous examples of budget cuts and staffing cuts across all forms of government. SEA 1 is impacting everyone, everywhere. In many ways, we've talked about being ahead of the curve because we knew that these potential impacts were coming. In spite of the headwinds that we are facing at this moment in time, we are prepared and responding and continuing to focus on the quality instruction, the quality supports that we have each and every day. We are committed to making sure that we are feeding our children nutritious and healthy meals. We're going to continue to maintain clean and safe facilities. We're going to continue to transport our children. The quality of instruction in our classrooms and the support services that our children deserve and our community expects are going to continue. It may look different. In all likelihood, it's going to look different. It will have to look different because we will have fewer dollars to do what we're accustomed to doing, but we're not going to not deliver on those promises. So as we move forward, 9 months into our 24-month strategy, there are 3 clear directions that we are focusing on. We're going to continue to pay very close attention to SEA 1 and all of the federal challenges and impacts that are forthcoming. We don't know what all the challenges are going to be at the federal level, and not necessarily all of them at the state level as well. Locally, there are demographic shifts that are occurring within our community, and we've been hearing about them from local demographers. We want to pay close attention, and we want to be good partners and good stewards within our community to make sure that we are working collaboratively and closely together. We continue to look for cost efficiencies. Are there some opportunities where we can save dollars, redirect some of those dollars back into the classroom because of some of the savings that we're able to identify? We want to make sure that the decisions that we're continuing to make are educationally sound decisions, that they're good for children, that they are showing that we are fiscally responsible stewards of the public monies, and that they are sustainable. We've got to be able to do things that are sustainable. And then ultimately, establishing appropriate staffing. You heard from Dr. Henderson last month where he provided a very excellent overview of how we go about making staffing decisions. We want to make sure that every staffing decision that we make is directly in alignment with student enrollment and the revenue sources that we have available to us. In closing, one of the things that I'm happy to share with you this evening is that we will be unveiling a financial portal for MCCSC dollars in January. It's a new resource that we're working on now. It's not complete, But our intention is to inform you, to educate you, and to make sure that you are at the forefront of all the dollars that we have from our budget to how we're spending those dollars. So we want it to be clear, we want it to be straightforward, we want it to be understandable, so that you can see how much care we are taking with each and every dollar, and how that impacts each and every student. You're going to see School Finance Information 101. And to be clear, school finance is not an easy topic. It's very complex and it's very complicated. And the changes that have been made recently have made it even more complicated. We're going to do our very best job to demystify some aspects of that. We want to continue to make sure that you know how the referenda dollars are being spent. We released our referenda impact report several months ago. We want to make sure that we continue to have that information available to you. And you'll continue to see updates on how we're moving forward with our 2-year strategy. Our focus is on every dollar, every student, every day. So I encourage you to take a look at this portal once we unveil this in a couple of months. But we want to hear your suggestions, your thoughts, your ideas on how can we better educate and better inform you. What questions do you need us to answer? What else do you want to know about the finances of your school corporation? With that, I will conclude our report and say thank you. Our 1-year report will be prepared and presented at the February board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Winston. And I think next we have an update on the work of the Redistricting Commission.
Yes. Dr. Dowling, would you and Dr. Garman McLean come forward? We are having a joint presentation this evening to give you a little bit more of an update on the work that's being done and how that's informing the report that will be forthcoming in the very near future. Dr. Dowling?
Thank you, Dr. Winston, President Hennessy, members of the Board of School Trustees. Thank you for this opportunity to provide an update on the redistricting study. I'll start by going to our project charter because we know it defines the scope of our work. Our project purpose is to study redistricting as a mechanism to balance socioeconomic status within schools while considering cost effectiveness of current and redistricted models. Within our project charter, we have our goals and metrics, which include our desire to gain a better understanding of considerations to achieve improved socioeconomic status balance, to gain better understanding of factors that inform cost effectiveness, as well as review and focus on understanding the impacts on students and families, as well as some other important goals and metrics. Looking at our timeline from the very beginning of our process, our board resolution from February 2024, which led us to November of 2024 when Preston Smith from Business Information Services, our demographer, presented 14 scenarios. In December of 2024, the board identified 2 priorities for redistricting, which are highlighted here. They are to balance socioeconomic status and to study that, as well as to study cost effectiveness. In March of 2025, our Redistricting Study Commission was formed, with our project charter being something that we began our very first commission meeting with in April of 2025. We've been meeting since then, since April, and we are, of course, now in November. The commission's work has included discussion, a focus of research, which will be really the heart of our presentation tonight. Dr. Garman McLean will be talking about that. We've been studying scenarios, including we've actually studied over 43 scenarios at this point. And we've worked with the community and our commission to choose some top considerations to help guide our commission's work. Those are highlighted here. Those top considerations directly from public input include capacity, resource allocation and class sizes, minimizing student reassignment, transportation, and neighborhood or community schools concept. Those have been the top considerations along with the BARD priorities, which have been the focal points for our study. Tonight's presentation topics, we will focus on research process and commission involvement. That's what Dr. Garman McLean will be talking about, along with some research examples to really highlight how research and best practices have been such an integral part of our commission's work. He will also talk about the limitations of research study that we've had in our commission. And I will conclude by talking about some cost effectiveness considerations. At this time, I will turn it over to him.
All right, Dr. Winston, President Hennessy, members of the board, I got my script here because this is some dense stuff. But since the beginning of the redistricting study process, we've engaged in this process that's rooted in research and a continuously evolving evaluative, and refining process that we've engaged the commission around. And so we've identified relevant peer-reviewed research articles that are based on either the board priorities, balancing socioeconomic status, or cost effectiveness, and commission feedback and input that has been provided by commission members along the way. We've reviewed a variety of research platforms or methods, including book chapters, professional reports, and policy briefs, but we've really anchored our work in peer-reviewed articles. And so we ensure that we're establishing a strong rigor and methodology so that our evidence that we're using to guide the work is really sound. And so to make sure that the research doesn't just stay on the paper, the commission leadership has provided commission members with a thorough review of this research. So each synopsis has been presented at a commission meeting, and so those include the citations, the research questions, aims, methodology, and key findings. So we've intentionally just reported directly what the research has stated in order to not make assumptions that the inferences of the research that they might not have made, so that we make sure that we're rooting ourselves in evidence, not assumptions. And on the previous slide, these synopses have been made publicly available on the MCCSC redistricting website, and there's a QR code for that. So that can be found, and that shows a level of connection and transparency so that we make sure that the community that isn't part of the commission also is engaging in the research that we're also engaging in. And so this slide just provides a brief snapshot of the research topics that have been explored when those conversations take place during the commission meetings. Each topic represents a phase in our learning process, highlighted in that circular process that we've established at the beginning of the commission. And it's helped the commission build a strong foundation of evidence that connects data, community values, and the local context. By grounding our work in this research, we ensure that a decision-making is not only informed by local realities, but aligned with what the evidence is known to promote an effective process. So research highlight A. So the first study that the commission reviewed was a systematic review by Castro and colleagues centered on 3 guiding questions. What rationales are most commonly used to drive school rezoning decisions? What strategies or methods are employed to carry out those rationales? And then what are the outcomes that emerge? And across the collection of studies, the 39 research articles that were extracted from the literature between 2007 and 2020, several consistent themes emerged. The most successful rezoning efforts are grounded in clearly articulated priorities that remain consistent throughout. When school corporations establish these priorities early and communicate them transparently, the resulting plans are far more likely to be successful. In addition, the research emphasizes the importance of setting clear non-negotiables, those parameters that define what must be preserved or achieved regardless of competing pressures. And the study also highlights the critical role of measurable criteria. Establishing explicit metrics or parameters are better to evaluate plans objectively. And finally, the research underscores the influence of parents and community members, and even calls them policy agents in these processes. As such, the commission's involvement isn't peripheral, it's been central for our work. And so Castro and colleagues found that when school corporations engage the community early and transparently and authentically, they do not only improve the quality of their plans, but also build public trust around the final decision. So the second article tonight that we'll be reviewing is Schwartz from 2012, and it's around balancing socioeconomic status. This examined a unique, naturally occurring randomization of students living in Section 8 housing, and either the housing that they were moved into was either in low or high income elementary school zones. And so what makes this particularly powerful of a study is it measured student achievement over 7 years. And it allowed the researchers to observe the long-term academic impacts on socioeconomic integration. And so what they found was that students significantly outperformed their low-income peers who remained in high-poverty schools in both reading and math, and the achievement gap between students from low-income backgrounds and their high-income peers was reduced by nearly half. which can be seen in this example graph here for mathematics achievement. But the findings also revealed an important nuance. The benefits, as you see, are not immediate, and they are gradual over time. But you also see there's other graphs in there that show that when students are attending schools with high concentrations of poverty, the more the poverty levels increase, the outcomes taper off, which may come as no surprise. And additionally, another article that we included about balancing socioeconomic status was Armour and colleagues from 2018, which was a large-scale quantitative study, the relationship between school-level SES and student achievement. And it's notable for its methodological rigor, so they used 3 statistical models, increasing the rigor of each model as they went. And they found that that as the rigor increased, the school SES effects were lessened for student achievement. So it's an important counterpoint to the previous study on socioeconomic integration, and it just allows us to, the commission, to remind us of the importance of examining both sides of the evidence, recognizing that while some research highlights meaningful student gains from socioeconomic balance, others emphasize the complexity of this and the inability to disentangle structural and instructional factors. So research highlight D, which is a research around financial impact of school closures. In 2019, this study analyzed 12 years worth of data from Ohio public schools, which addressed 2 key questions. Do school districts save operating expenditures by closing schools? And then which expenditure category bears the brunt of operating expenditures cuts? And by analyzing district level data before and after closure events, there were measurable, meaningful costs, savings associated with school closures. The figure to the right there shows that on average, districts that closed 1 or more schools reduced their total operating expenditures per pupil following the closing event. And some of that was immediate, some of it was in the future 2, 3, 4 years down the road, as you can see there. The findings also suggest that these costs were not uniform across all categories, and that it was mostly non-classroom expenditures that had the most savings, such as maintenance, transportation, and administrative costs. For the commission, the study contributed valuable data-driven insights into the fiscal dimension of redistricting, helping to conceptualize discussions of cost effectiveness during our meetings. And the last article is from 2021 about student reassignment and transportation, which examined the effects of large-scale student reassignment efforts in Wake County, North Carolina Public Schools between 1999 and 2010, which is a period for this school district that was marked by significant efforts to balance enrollment and maintain socioeconomic diversity across their schools. Analyses found that in the initial year following reassignment, there was no measurable effect on student academic performance. However, in the years that followed, students had been reassigned began to show modest but positive gains in achievement, suggesting that the benefits of the reassignment took time to manifest. The study also found evidence that reassignment did not increase absenteeism or suspension rates for those students either. These findings can be observed there for math achievement in the top left graph, the top right for reading, chronic absenteeism, and suspensions as well. And not in the graphs to the right, but it also showed that the research found that student reassignment did not result in students exiting Wake County Public Schools, but instead there was a high percentage of students that attended their reassigned school. And so for that concludes my review of the research that the Redistricting Study Commission has engaged with to date. I'll pass it back to Dr. Dowling now.
Thank you so much.
So at this point, I wanted to just talk about the data that informed our study. The data we started with was, of course, we had the percentage of free and reduced lunch students at our schools. We had median distance from students' utilization rates, both from our demographer, but really from our own calculations based on communication and work with our principals. We had projected student enrollments, and our commission recognized that that data was really helpful, but based on input from our commission, we recognized that we need more data to best inform ourselves about redistricting and cost effectiveness in our district. So in response to commission input, we were able to bring in more data. We had Dr. Baton, who was my co-presenter last month, With his support and his help in his creation of the dashboard, we were able to bring in Monroe County parcel data and U.S. Census data through the American Community Survey. Just like to spend a moment to talk about our parameters of our study and research, including what's within the scope of our study. Our redistricting scenarios were based on student residence and attendance zones. Because it was a study we based on projected enrollment within attendance zones, by that I mean we didn't factor in students, transfer students. Wherever students were, their zone of attendance was, that's what we based our studies work on. That was allowed us to not get into too much complexity beyond that would be able to limit our insights from our study. We have studied a sample of all possible. We have studied a sample of all possible redistricting scenarios. I mentioned earlier we studied 43 scenarios. There are many, many more scenarios that we could have studied, but due to the commission's work, we wanted to focus on what insights could we get about redistricting and cost effectiveness through those studies, but we also recognize there's many scenarios that we were not able to study. We studied all scenarios through a neutral lens with the data that we had available. And finally, we recognize and we greatly appreciate the insights we've gotten from our 92 commission members, but I think it's important for us to acknowledge that 92 commission members, although it's a large commission, that cannot fully capture all the opinions or perspectives of community members. Some factors that were not included in our study of redistricting scenarios, things that were outside the scope of our project charter, included building ages and conditions, student enrollment of specific populations such as special education, English language learners, transfer students, special programming such as ALPS, I already talked about special education, or staffing allocations. All those things were outside the scope of the charter. In what way does the redistricting study impact the 2-year strategy to achieve financial balance? This has been a question from commission members, so I wanted to just highlight that here this evening. One of the 2 board's priorities, which of course our board knows, was to study cost effectiveness. That is how cost effectiveness had been a focal point of the study, is to gain insight and to study it, to see what understandings we can get about how it's impacted in redistricting. As outlined in our project charter, factors that impact cost effectiveness will be included in our redistricting study report, and I'll talk about the timeline for that a little bit later in a future slide. And full and comprehensive cost analysis of redistricting scenarios presented in the study are outside the scope of the project charter. For example, we're able to study the average cost of an elementary building in our corporation. We're able to, Dr. Garman-McLean talked about some understanding we can get from research articles about some insights we can gain about the impact of redistricting on cost effectiveness, but we were not able to analyze the exact cost savings of each specific scenario. That is beyond the scope of the charter. Again, our focus of our commission is to gain general understanding and insights we can about redistricting along with cost effectiveness. Looking at next steps, we've spent, as I mentioned, we looked at 43 scenarios at the elementary level. Now we want to give our complete attention to looking at things at the secondary level. We'll be looking at scenarios focused at the middle and high school level. For those will be the next round of redistricting scenarios that we will be studying to gain insight. Commission leaders will be working on writing our report. We've already started some preliminary work, but of course we have lots to write about and what all the insights that we've gained from working with the commission since March and April. We anticipate sharing and having that report for the board sometime in the spring of 2026. Just again to highlight what the key components of that report will look like. It will be the insights we've learned. It will focus on what we've learned about redistricting and cost effectiveness through our examination of redistricting scenarios and their impacts. It will include insights that we've gained about factors that impact cost effectiveness, and it'll include a corporation-wide analysis of building use and capacity. Thank you, and at this time, we would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Dowling. Thank you, Dr. McLean. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I've got a couple. As you approach the middle and high school conversation, and this is something I've brought up in the past, is there any consideration of talking about moving 6th grade to the middle school?
So far, it's been considered outside the scope of the project charter. So, of course, our work is guided by the board's input and work, but as outlined in our project charter, that has been considered outside of the charter so far. But we will, of course, do follow our work based on the board guidance and Dr. Winston's guidance.
Okay, and then this question's for Dr. Garman McLean. You had the two studies that kind of had really competing decisions about the value of moving socioeconomic status and balancing it. Did they find any correlation between schools with a lower SES status and high turnover rate in the staffing?
That was not something part of either of those two studies. We did examine one article, which can be found in one of the synopses online. We examined, because the commission members had asked a very similar question. So we examined research related to staff turnover, staff attrition in high poverty schools. So that was something we examined, but not in light of student outcomes.
I just wondered if there was a correlation between those two.
Neither of those studies examined that correlation, but
Okay.
there may be research out there that we could continue to
Okay.
review.
Other questions?
Dr. Dowling, you mentioned two studies, or actually, I'm not sure who mentioned this. There were studies that you meant that between the two of you, you mentioned that talked about the cost savings of closing schools, and then also that there wasn't significant loss after rezoning, loss in student attendance. Do you know if those studies controlled for the socioeconomic status of those schools, or if either of them were in states that had voucher programs?
So with those two studies, I think the dates by which data is extracted from are early 2000s, and so the school choice climate was different. And so in Wake County, that was something that the commission members had talked about extensively about this research, and that it's a different climate around school choice around the country. While I can't speak to North Carolina's or Ohio's because that's where the cost effectiveness study was taking place. One could assume that outcomes may be different if those studies were replicated in today's climate around education and school choice, but I can't speak to what that would mean for the outcomes. So,
Okay, thank you.
That's a good question. Any other questions or comments about what we've heard tonight?
I did have one question for Mr. Irwin. When it comes to the potential consolidation of federal grants to education that our state is trying to do, is that going to help or hinder us further?
I don't have a good answer for you on that right now. That's probably going to be something that will take some time to analyze and try to look through the weeds of what it is that would look like.
That the property was purchased in 2022 for potential future use for the school corporation. The land consists of 8 acres with 6 usable acres due to a flood area in the back of the property. It exists of about 77,000 plus square feet of mixed space, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. It is centrally located within the MCCSC district, and current configuration shows that it has 170 plus parking spaces on the property. There's variety in the design of that property that includes office space, storage, loading docks, as well as what one would describe as large span areas, meaning that there are no columns in the floor plan area, so the roof spans a large distance. Free open space, so to speak. As I mentioned, there was no written formal plan for this administration to reference when we began our tenure. But the previous superintendent did have some considerations that really could be categorized within operational efficiencies and services. And so the list here is not meant to be exhaustive by any means, but to provide the board with a brief list of some of the previous considerations for how this space may be utilized that were discussed but never formalized in a plan. So those include operational efficiencies that would include large group training and meeting space, warehouse for materials, equipment storage, additional bus parking, office space that might involve the relocation of MCCSC departments to a more central location, more easily accessible by parents. Services that were discussed were a dedicated boardroom, a welcome center for families that might also include a centralized enrollment point, and some support services that most directly support students and families, potentially being centrally located. So there was kind of a one-stop shop for a family who was moving to Bloomington, enrolling in MCCSC schools. They could go to that welcome center and have access to multiple departments all in one location that are currently spread throughout the corporation. Currently, we are utilizing the property for material and equipment storage as well as additional bus parking. At this stage, we need to formally examine its usefulness to the school corporation to inform decision making for the property's future. It's unlikely that we would have another chance to acquire a centrally located property that would provide us with another equivalent opportunity to address future needs at the board's direction. As we plan for the future, there are a number of decision-making considerations that really need to be analyzed. Those include opportunities to make this unique space um, meet the needs of our community and our school corporation, the potential relocation of existing departments that we've already mentioned, the ability to centralize support for our families and our students, and to improve service delivery, while also giving consideration to our fiscal health as an organization and what are the long-term benefits of that space to us. As the board enters into a brief introductory and conceptual conversation about the potential uses of this property, here are a few possible consideration points. Again, this is not meant to be an exhaustive list, but that might guide the board's conversation. What was the original purchase intent? What are the possible future uses? What are the board's priorities and the school corporation's needs to achieve those priorities? Costs and savings, and implications of potentially selling the property. So with that, this concludes my presentation of a brief overview of the statistics or data around the Herald Times property. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'll leave those potential points up on the board for your reference as you have your conversation this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. Yeah, this is great. I know that we have had this property for a while now, and there were some existing, as Dr. Henderson sort of went through, considerations, nothing ever formalized, but it is across from South and from the administration building, and so when that building was purchased, I think there were some potential future use cases. And I know that we're at a very different moment right now where we are, really thinking about potential costs, potential savings, and just sort of really looking through every single thing that we can in the district to identify what is going to be beneficial to us in the long run and what we might relinquish or cease to do or whatever else it is. So I just want to open this up briefly. We're not making any decisions tonight. We're simply having a brief discussion about how we proceed from this moment about this decision. So we're really thinking about how we want to make a decision and less about making the decision at this moment. So I'll just open it up for board comments or questions, things that people might want to know or say at this moment based on what we just heard.
My biggest wonder, which I brought up before, I can't remember in this space or not, is just the environmental impacts, having that study done on that location to know, with it being a facility that used ink and that there might still be some there. What if that has an impact for us? whether we did something with it, whether we sold it, how that impacts. So that's a big question that I have.
My question, I remember our previous CFO, he talked about what the benefits or the pros and cons of keeping it or selling it. He just made a brief comment. So Matt, what would the savings be? How would it impact us financially?
I think it really just depends on what goes along with that. I mean, if we're going to invest dollars to renovate it, obviously that affects future abilities of the debt service fund as it relates to where those dollars would possibly be reallocated to different projects or needs across the corporation. Also, if we're going to do that project, how does that affect other buildings that we have other departments in, and do we need to continue to have those buildings? So I think it really just depends on what the board's desire is for the use and what that comes along with. If it comes along with just adding that into the fold, along with everything else that we currently have, yes, that will increase expenditures. So I think that it really just depends on what all comes along with it and what all is in those plans as it relates to staffing and all those pieces that are ongoing past just the capital expenditures that fund some of our projects in our buildings anyway. And so that's the piece past it to say you renovate a building and you do something like that to it. But what are the ongoing commitments and costs that it has along with it to operate it, the maintenance, the staffing required, all of those pieces that need to be considered as it relates to the impact that it has on the school corporation. So it's a very broad and maybe very broad answer to your question. But I think it really just depends on all the surrounding context and circumstances based on the decision that's made.
I think one of the key things to keep in mind, though, is Dr. Anderson mentioned, it's a very unique property. There aren't a lot of them that exist. The structure of the building has some huge abilities. As he said, it's got a lot of open space without columns that can be done for warehousing, that type of thing. That finding those spaces within the central area of our school district is pretty hard to find. And the ability of things that could be consolidated there. And the other thing that we'd have to consider is what will we do with that building is currently being used for. So those are things to consider as well.
Yep, absolutely. Other questions or comments?
I think there's some things that I would probably add to this list of considerations or add nuance to. One of them would be what Ross mentioned, which is the way that we're currently using this property and what the cost would be of finding a replacement for those uses. A big question for me is the final assessed value of the property or what we could actually sell it for. And then probably the biggest question for me is the public perception of the property. That's something that I know that we have gotten some negative feedback about from the public, and we do have to pass a referendum in either 2026 or 2028. So I think that I hope I understand school finance pretty well, better than most. So I kind of understand how we can move money from one bucket to the next, but whether that's true or not, I'm still worried about the way that the public perceives that if we end up doing a big renovation or even just keeping the property. So that's probably my biggest concern.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Erin. I think a couple of things. So, for those listening and wondering, well, what are we using it for right now? Because you've said that, I think a couple of people have said it. Right now, it's primarily storage space for us. It's overflow space and it's bus parking, right? It's essentially an overflow space. And so you're right that those things would have to move somewhere. Now, whether they can be moved into existing buildings or we'd have to find storage space of some sort, we don't know. That stuff needs to be examined. And then, yes, there is the cost of that, right? Because the cost of maintaining the building as it is in this very moment is not extraordinarily high, though we know that there are probably some things that need to happen, like the roof needs to be done and HVAC system needs to be updated. So there will be costs affiliated with if we decided to keep the building and not do any massive repair or renovation to it, there would still be costs to maintain and upkeep the building. I also just want to say that, from a dollars perspective, the building I think we bought for just under 3 million or right around 3 million. And I think people have, I think when you don't live in this world or don't look at school finance, like $3 million seems like a lot of dollars, but in the scope of our budget, $3 million, while it is a lot of money, it is also not a lot of money. It is a fraction of our expenses in any given payroll period, even, right? I mean, so it isn't going to do anything extraordinary or grand, in the big scheme of things. And so I think that there's just some sort of like understanding that needs to be had about like what those dollars are and what they can actually do in a system like this. And the other thing that I would say is that, um, I think I think that it would be, both interesting and important for us to perhaps get community feedback as we proceed. And so, as we think about how we proceed in this decision, I think one of the things that we'd like to do is to ask Dr. Winston and her team to perhaps put together a community forum, so that we can just receive information from the public on this building, but also perhaps do a little bit of education at the start of that to help them understand what the building is, basically a little bit of what Dr. Henderson just did tonight, right? And helping them understand the realities of that again, a little bit from the school finance perspective, a little bit from why the building was bought, what it's capable of doing for us or not doing, right? So, Dr. Winston, would you be willing to do that for us?
I would. So my understanding is that you would like me and my team to organize some sort of a community forum, um, or some mechanism by which we would gather feedback, impressions, perspectives, from members of our faculty, members of our community, and our families.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, I think an open conversation where people can sort of receive information, give feedback, feelings,
And
thoughts,
educational
as well. Yes, I think that would be ideal.
What would be the time frame that the board would like me to do something like that within?
I would say Q1.
I mean, we are towards the end of Q4. I mean, we're almost, and we've got holiday upon holiday coming up of all sorts. By the end of Q1, we would have that
I
information.
would think.
Okay. We'll get working on that.
Does that feel okay? I mean, we're not voting. We're just.
I don't know. I'm asking our administrative team and our superintendent if that feels pressured or not. And so, I mean, we're talking about full transparency here. So I want to make sure that we're not putting a timeline on you all. That is also.
Let me do this. Let me get with my team. So I'm interpreting that to mean by the end of March to have convened some sort of a forum or mechanism by which we gather feedback and input, whether it's in person or some other format. And so between now and the end of March, I do think that could be potentially reasonable, but I would like to take a look at that in the context of all of the other priorities that are currently on our plate.
I appreciate that, Ashley. I really do, and I don't want to push back on it because I always want to give you all the time that you need. However, I am also aware of the timing in which we would have to announce whether or not we're going to run a referendum. And I want to be sort of aware and cognizant of being fully transparent about potentially upcoming projects or not in light of that. So I do think that March would be ideal by the end of March, so that we had all of the information we needed to move forward with both transparent and ethical decision making regarding whatever the future finance situation looks like and referendums.
Thank you. That's very helpful to receive that clarification.
Oh, I can't clarify as a single person. That would be that's my
the
comment.
the collective clarification.
Well, I have a question. I mean, being still new on this board, so asking the community for a form when you present spend $3 million on a building that we didn't have a plan for, how are you gonna present it? Like, what's the plan?
Well, we do have some plans. So
Potential plans.
potential plans, right? And
Okay.
so there were considerations when the building was bought, but those were held by the previous superintendent.
Okay.
And so
Mhm.
as things shift and administration shift, plans also shift, right? And so we just want to sort of be aware of the fact that we're at a different moment with different potential use cases, or maybe some of the same. But we also had CSO architects, I think,
Yeah,
at
I
some
got
point.
that. That's what I
Remember,
was wondering. Would that rendition? Would you show that instead? Because we saw
Potentially.
that with.
I think the pieces of that could probably be shown as just sometimes people need to have a visual
Yeah. That's what I'm
of what
thinking.
they're even talking about. And so
Mhm.
potentially, I don't know, I don't I want to leave that up to the administration to sort of decide what they will use in that presentation, but I do think some points of education to just say, here are the things it could potentially be used for if we decided to run a capital project. We're not saying yes or no, but just like if we did, we could run a capital project and it could be these things in this building, right? And at least give the community a chance to imagine,
Yeah.
like, is this something that would be valuable to our community if we centralized our services, if we had a health clinic here, if we move, and to sort of weigh in, because I don't think that they have ever really heard fully, what that building was for. And as a result, the conversations that arise in a vacuum of information are speculation, right?
Right.
All kinds of speculation. So I think this is the opportunity for us to do what likely should have been done a long time ago.
Perfect. Thanks.
So to be clear, the directive from the collective board is for me and my team to conduct some sort of a forum where we would inform and educate the public about the potential uses of the current HT building and solicit their perception, their feedback, their impressions and opinions about said use. And to do so um, no later than the end of March of 2026.
And
Am I understanding the direction and the directive?
I think, can you remind me when we need to make a decision about the 2026 referendum by?
No later than May of 2026.
March does feel right then. Yeah.
And I assume when you mention in the community, that would also include staff, because I think
Yes,
staff could definitely could see benefits of, for instance, the health center.
yes. Thank you for the direction from the collective board.
Thank you so much. Any other last comments before we close this discussion and move on? Okay, then we will move on to comments or reports, committee reports from the board. Does anyone have anything to share? All right, seeing none, then we
Well,
move.
hold on. I have
Yes?
something to share.
Okay, that's
I
great.
finally had a committee meeting, so I would like to share it.
Please do.
We had the High Ability Committee meeting last night. Was it last night? Oh, yeah, just last night. There's some great things that they're doing. I'm learning. They were excited about our numbers have increased with our students who are in free and reduced lunch, so that was great. A lot of numbers increased. I don't have the graphics, but they're doing some great work, and I'm happy to join that committee.
I love that. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. All right, anybody else with a committee report? Okay, then Dr. Winston, finally, do you have any additional information?
Just a couple of brief updates. Want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. There is no school next week. As of this coming Friday, our students will be out and our staff will be out for a whole week. And we wish everyone a wonderful holiday. And I do also want to acknowledge that we've had some amazing fall sport accomplishments for the 25-26 season. Definitely want to congratulate both Bloomington High School North and Bloomington High School South football teams for making it to the sectional championship game. And we want to wish Bloomington High School South well as they move on to semi-state this coming Friday against New Palestine. Our girls golf, our boys tennis team, and I don't know if anybody saw the newspaper today where they identified 16 female wrestlers and 10 of them are from MCCSC. So I just want to acknowledge that our students continue to excel in cross country, girls, boys, golf, soccer, so on and so forth. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Winston, for the update on all the sports balls. We love them. And our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be held on Tuesday, December 16th, 2025. We are adjourned.